What's up everybody, D-Man back, welcome to a brand new video, and today we are going to be reviewing the giant Skar King with Whipslash. Does that imply that at some point there will be a figure in existence that is a Skar King without the Whipslash? And if so, what's that going to be? Is he going to get another weapon in the movie or what? Makes a guy think. That's right, in today's video we will be checking out the new Playmates toys Giant Skar King with Whipslash. I believe this is the last traditional giant figure they made. I don't think they have any plans to make a Shimo. I don't know why, maybe because Shimo's just too long of a figure, but this is the last giant figure we've got at the moment. I really appreciate the Playmates packaging. I do like these purple crystals quite a bit. Of course, there's a Godzilla and Kong render, Godzilla and Kong render. This side's just the crystals. This back of the box is very cool with the big Skar King. I like that font written on the side. Skar King. Then of course you've got this giant picture of him where he's got those weird blue eyes. These look creepy. Not creepy like in the movie creepy, but still creepy, which I do appreciate. I do think it's cool that Skar King has like a brand new layout we've never seen on any of the other figures' boxes. It's his throne room with that very spiky, scary throne he sits on. And then you've got this lava pouring down, which I believe Skar King lives amongst a volcanic area with a lot of lava. Bottom of the box just shows you the Giant Godzilla and the Giant Kong that you can get as well, which we've already opened up on the channel. There's Skar King out of the box, and here is the Whipslash. The Whipslash, again, like I said with the small one, I think it's a pretty neat weapon. One thing that makes me a little nervous about this is I'm not sure how the Whipslash is supposed to look, but mine has these deep grooves right here that go down to almost the surface. It's got them up at the top too, right here. None of the other ones have that. You know, you don't see them here. You do see them here. You don't see them here. It looks very thin, which makes me worried that the Whipslash could break into pieces if you were to play with it, which defeats the whole purpose of it. Maybe it's just a result of they needed it to get into this position, so they added those at the top and the bottom, because this is of course how he wears it. You kind of plug the base into the mouth here. Don't know how that really works in the context of the movie. Then you pop it back out. So this is the jaw piece. I previously speculated that this might be a Godzilla. I'm thinking that maybe it could be like a war bat because the jaw here just doesn't look quite like Godzilla's jaw. It does actually look pretty decent here with the teeth being nicely sculpted. The fangs look nicely sculpted as well. It's clearly a jaw piece. It is very square, like very geometric. It doesn't quite feel smooth or rounded like you would expect a bone to look, but maybe that's because in the movie it's not really. And then the spine piece actually does look pretty decent overall. And here's Skar King. He is actually a really cool toy. He's got a great in-hand feel to him. It just is a fun thing to have and to be able to play with. He's very easy to articulate, which is really nice and exciting, especially for kids who want to have these things beat each other up. That's really cool. I'm very impressed with the Skar King. The sculpt is very nice. The bigger scale brings out some of the better details, and it actually makes the face look a little sleeker, a little more sunken in, and a little more menacing like the Skar King from the film. It brings out the fear a little better. The teeth look really great. I really like the fangs, and I like the way that they are inside the lips. The nose looks really nice. The eyebrows give him a very menacing face. I'm really impressed with the ears. The ears have a lot of depth to them that I just wouldn't have expected from Playmates. The fur just looks very nice, especially on the head. It looks really nice on the head. There is a lot of smoothness around the head, and there are a lot of areas like when you lift up the arms where it's very smooth. I'm actually not going to hold that against this larger figure because I understand that's there so that the figure can articulate easier, so that he can move his joints better. That way you can look up and have his head turn around without having plastic cranking on plastic. Skar King's fur overall looks very nice. It kind of brings out a bit of that arched spine that I talked about on the smaller figure. I really appreciate the way it sinks into the back before getting into the butt, which looks a little better on this one than it did on the small one, but man, still not as caked as our boy King Kong. That's why Kong's gonna win. The fur going down the arms looks very good. I like the way that the fur splits where the arm goes to the skin, and then you get the really well-defined muscles. They've done a very good job not only with the skin texturing, but also with how muscular Skar King is. The hands look old and wrinkled, which I really appreciate. Kind of shows Skar King's age in a really cool way. And then you get around that where you've got actual fingernails sculpted in there, which is very cool, and the insides of the palms are sculpted as well, which is nice. I really like Skar King's chest quite a lot. I think it looks very cool. I also really like his stomach and abs. Those look very nice. I like how they are kind of subtle. He's not been able to bulk on the mass that King Kong has, but he still has a very muscular physique, and I think this figure does a really good job showing that. He still has a very very low body fat type aesthetic. The fur on the legs looks pretty good, especially on the bottom halves of the legs where the feet are. The feet look great. The Playmates unrenderedness still is visible in areas like the bottom part of the torso, but I'm not going to hold it against the figure too much because overall I'm pretty impressed with it. Still does have those giant, ugly, nasty gaps underneath the feet. I don't understand why they do that. It makes no sense to me. Biggest thing that holds the sculpt back is just those bolt holes on the back. Those are very ugly and distracting. So there's the Skar King holding the Whipslash. And then of course he can wear it. It actually looks a little chunkier on him than it does on the smaller figure. It just doesn't look as good while he's wearing it on this bigger one, but that's what he looks like while wearing it. The paint is pretty decent. Mine's got a lot of paint chipping on it, especially on the face. It's noticeable. You can see it kind of on the eyebrows, but the paint is pretty decent overall. I really like the pale egg color they've picked for the skin. It's not white, so it doesn't look unpainted, and it isn't quite the same color, although very close to the color of the bones, so they still stand out against each other. I like the way that it bleeds into the red. Oftentimes it has a gradient into the red, especially on the way that it goes into the chest. The chest where the red and the white meet is very cool. I also like it on the head, although I don't quite understand why it spills onto the hair as much as it does, but it does look pretty good. I don't know if that's going to be face paint. I know Skar King also paints his face. Like, I believe the red on Skar King's face is actually face paint. And then it goes on to the arms as well, where he's got those stripes that he's put on himself. Those look very cool. And then I think again with the chest, I believe that he's painted up his chest a little bit to make it look a little more menacing. The eyes are nice and blue with black pupils. I believe Skar King in the movie, his pupils are actually white, which is a little creepier, and I would have preferred if they did that on the figure, but the eyes actually do look pretty well painted. They're both looking in the right direction, which is always nice when a Playmates figure does that. And then other than that, he's just mostly a red color because, of course, the fur color is inspired by orangutans, whereas the actual sculpt of Skar King is a little more chimp inspired, which is a very cool dynamic to play up. And it also makes him more visually distinct from Kong, which is cool. While the Whipslash does impede articulation a little bit, that problem is solved when you put the weapon in Skar King's hand. This Skar King figure has some amazing articulation. His legs have a lot of range to them. Not only can they kick out, but they can also go to the sides like this, which is really impressive. Same way that they can go up and also out. He just has a really nice range of articulation overall. He can hold his poses pretty well. He can look around very nicely. I really appreciate that they added this torso joint to Skar King. They did that on the smaller figure as well. That's fantastic. The thing I'm the most impressed by is the way they've done the neck and the head. He has a ball joint in the head where he's able to actually turn his head looking side to side in a way that the other figures are not. So not only can he look up and down, he can have his head rotate, but he can also kind of look to the side. I really wish they would have done that with the Kongs. And that is the benefit of not having such a broad-shouldered figure. There are 12 points of articulation, 14 if you count double joints, I believe. Might go a little higher to like 16 because this might be double jointed as well. You've also got a hinge in this, and then I believe a ball joint in that to give him more range. I think Playmates just really killed the Skar King toys. Here's the big Playmate Skar King against the small Playmate Skar King with the Whipslash. Generally speaking, they've actually made some improvements from the small one to the big one. The small one articulates just a little smoother than the big one does, but the big one actually has a little more range with its articulation, especially with that neck piece. While the Whipslash does work better as an accessory for the smaller toy, I'm really glad they gave it to the bigger one because it would have felt a little cheap if they didn't. Like, they've already got the model for it, why not just scale it up along with the Skar King toy? And I'm really glad they did. The paint jobs are nearly identical, but I think I do prefer the larger paint job just because it looks better, especially in the face. The eyes in particular look better. For once, I feel like Playmates generally has made nothing but improvements from the small one to the big one, and that's a pretty cool thing. And here's the Playmates Skar King versus the King Kong from 2017's Kong Skull Island. This figure does have a really wonderful sculpt and a pretty nice paint job, but I just wanted to bring it out just to show how much improvement Playmates has made with the articulation over the years, where now we've got a giant ape with an accessory that also has a lot of articulation versus the Kong Skull Island one, which really didn't have much. There's those guys standing off in a way that Skar King's gonna have all of these ape minions in his lair. Here's Skar King versus the Giant Godzilla. I can't picture a world in which Skar King could pull off the victory against Godzilla. Maybe if they had made the Skar King toy a little larger, like he's supposed to be, I think taller than Godzilla, maybe then you could buy it, but as it stands, I just feel like Godzilla would dominate this guy in a fight. I just personally don't think this little whip would do much to Godzilla. You know what I'm saying? It's just a very strange matchup here. A weird looking Godzilla versus a new ape monster that isn't Kong. It's just a strange new world we're entering with the Godzilla landscape. And then finally, here's King Kong versus Skar King. Now this one, although Kong is like pure muscle and looks like he could just rip Skar King into pieces, I could still buy that Skar King would be such a better fighter that he'd be able to defeat Kong in a fight. There's Kong versus his newest opponent, the Skar King. Can't really have the Kong actually make contact when you make them beat each other up. The yellow on the beast glove, it just scrapes off onto every figure it comes into contact with, but at least I can still do this. They actually look great together. Now this is a fun matchup. I am excited to see these two go at it in the new movie. If it's done right, it could be very gargantuous, which would be epic. The giant Skar King with the Whipslash. I'd say this is like a 9 out of 10 on a Playmate standard. The Whipslash doesn't translate to the larger scale as well as the smaller one did, but I'm not going to hold that against it because I'm glad they gave him the accessory. The Skar King looks pretty good. There are a couple things that you could have maybe done to help it out. I really don't understand why they don't patch up the screw holes. It's very easy to put something in over them. I see people do that on Twitter and Instagram all the time. Overall, he's very cool. I like the articulation. I think the paint job is pretty good. Again, maybe some quality control where mine has a lot of paint chipping on it. Other than that, I think it's a very solid toy. So yeah, I'm happy to give this one a 9 out of 10 for a Playmate scale. Do you have the giant Skar King with the Whipslash? And if so, what do you think of him? And what are you most excited for about Skar King heading into the new Empire? Please comment that down below and let me know what you're thinking. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to check out the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below. By supporting the Patreon, you are directly supporting this channel and making sure that I can continue to make videos like this for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.